Picture this: a print shop on a gray Tuesday morning in downtown Toronto. The kind of place that smells like ink and old paper and feels like time slows down the moment you walk in. There's a man behind the counter. His name is Daniel. His hands are always stained, not because he's careless, but because he's been here long enough that the ink has just become part of him. He's good at his job, reliable, the kind of guy you'd never worry about. He shows up, he delivers, he doesn't make waves. But every morning, between the hum of the press and the faint sound of traffic on King Street, Daniel looks out through the small frosted window above the counter, and he feels it. That hollow ache, the one he can't name. Not failure, not grief, something quieter, something he's almost embarrassed to admit. The feeling that his life is ordinary. And if you've ever had that feeling, that creeping sense that you're living inside a life that's somehow smaller than the one you were meant for, this video is for you. Because what Daniel was carrying wasn't laziness. It wasn't a lack of ambition. It was something much older than that, and much harder to see. Here's what most people didn't know about Daniel. He'd studied design at Ryerson, loved it. He had this sketchbook he'd fill up every weekend: typefaces, layouts, album covers for bands that didn't exist yet. His professors used to hold his work up in class. Then his dad got sick. Hospital bills stacked up quietly, the way they do. And Daniel, being the kind of person he was, made the practical choice. He took the steady job, the one with the benefits, the one that paid the rent. And design? It became a luxury he'd come back to, eventually, when things settled down. Except, eventually has a way of never arriving. Years passed. His dad recovered. The bills got paid. But somewhere in all that waiting, Daniel had built a story about himself, quiet and convincing, that went something like this. That version of me, the one with the sketchbook, was naive. The world doesn't work like that. Better to be realistic. Sound familiar? Because the fear of being ordinary rarely announces itself loudly. It doesn't look like giving up. It looks like being responsible. It looks like making the safe choice. It looks like waiting for the right time that never quite comes. Before we go further, if this is already landing somewhere familiar, drop a single word in the comments. Just one. The word that comes up when you think about the version of yourself you've been putting off. We'll come back to that at the end. Okay, back to Daniel. One afternoon, Daniel was tidying up the back room when he found something he'd forgotten about. A poster. He'd designed it months earlier just for himself, just to see if he still could. Clean lines, restrained color palette, the kind of thing that made you stop and look twice. He'd rolled it up and tucked it behind a filing cabinet, out of sight. A regular customer, an older man named Mr. Hayes, a retired art director who'd run a studio in London before moving to Toronto, happened to walk in at that exact moment. He saw Daniel holding the poster. He asked to see it. There was a long silence. Then Mr. Hayes said something Daniel wasn't prepared for. "Why are you hiding this?" 3 words. No lecture, no advice, just a question. And Daniel didn't have an answer, not a real one. He said something about it being just a hobby, mister. Hayes nodded slowly and said, "That's not an answer. That's a defense." That night, walking home along the waterfront with the city lights blurring on Lake Ontario, Daniel kept turning that question over. Why was he hiding it? Not because it wasn't good enough. Because what if it was? What if he put it out there and it mattered? And then he'd have to admit he'd spent years burying something real. The fear of being ordinary wasn't about being mediocre. It was about the opposite. It was the terror of discovering you're not and having no excuse left. And here's where it gets interesting. Because what Daniel was feeling that night, that specific mix of relief and dread, it has a name. And once you understand what's actually driving it, the whole thing starts to make sense in a way it never did before. Here's something most people never figure out about the fear of being ordinary. It doesn't live in lazy people. It lives in the ones who try the hardest. The ones who set the goals, restart the routines every Monday, read the books, and still go to bed feeling like they came up short. The reason is this: they're not running towards something. They're running away from a feeling. The feeling that, without the achievement, without the proof, they might not be enough. And no finish line fixes that. Because the goalpost keeps moving. Because you're not building, you're escaping. The exhaustion that comes from this isn't the good kind. It's not the tiredness of someone who worked hard and slept well. It's the tiredness of someone who can't stop, who never feels like today was quite enough. Daniel had been running for years, and here's the cruel irony: he'd been running away from the very thing that might have finally given him some peace. The sky above the lake. That night on the waterfront, he stopped walking. He just looked up. The sky over Lake Ontario doesn't care about your CV. It doesn't rank you. It doesn't compare you to anyone. It's just there. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt the size of his actual life versus the size of the cage he'd built inside his own head. The cage wasn't the print shop. It was the belief that the real version of him needed to stay hidden to stay safe. And that's the moment things began to shift. Not with a big decision, just with a question, finally answered honestly. What happened next wasn't a movie montage. Daniel didn't quit his job. He didn't launch a brand overnight. He didn't go viral. He just started doing one thing differently. Every evening, after dinner, he gave himself 1 hour, just one, to design whatever he wanted. No client, no brief, no pressure. Some nights, it was good. Most nights, it was nothing special. He'd post things on Instagram and hear silence. He'd refresh, see 3 likes, feel a little foolish, and sit with that feeling for a moment. The small sting of putting something real out there and watching the world shrug. That specific kind of loneliness that nobody warns you about. The one that comes not from failing, but from trying quietly, without applause, without proof that it's going anywhere. And then he'd do it again the next night anyway. This is the part nobody talks about. The long, unglamorous middle. The weeks that feel like nothing is happening, when everything, slowly, is. 3 months in, a local bookshop owner in the annex saw his work online. She reached out, asked if he'd design their window display. Just a small thing, she said, nothing big. Daniel said yes. It wasn't a turning point that looked like a turning point. It looked like a Tuesday, but something had changed. He'd stopped hiding, and the world, quietly, had started to notice. Months later, Daniel told me something I keep coming back to. He said, "I used to look out that window at the shop and think that's the world, and I'm in here, but I wasn't trapped by the window. I was trapped by the story I'd been telling myself about who got to be on the other side of it." He didn't clean the window, he cleaned the thinking. And that's the thing about the fear of being ordinary. It's not really about being ordinary. It's about the belief that who you are, right now, without the achievement, isn't worth much. That belief is the real prison. Not your job, not your city, not your age. 3 things I want you to take from this. 1. The fear of being ordinary almost always comes from running away from a feeling, not from lacking ambition. If you've been pushing hard and still feel empty, you're probably moving in the wrong direction. 2. No achievement will fix it if the engine is fear. The finish line keeps moving. The only way out is to change what you're running toward. 3. The ordinary days, the ones that feel like nothing is happening, are usually the ones that hold the most. We only see that later, when we look back. So pay attention to them now. Ordinary doesn't mean small, it means real. And real lived honestly, with presence, is the only kind of life that actually feels like one. Earlier, I asked you to drop a word in the comments, the word for the version of yourself you've been putting off. Here's what I'd love now. Tell me what's the one thing you've been hiding. Not from the world, from yourself. The thing that's rolled up behind a filing cabinet somewhere in your mind. You don't have to have a plan. You don't need it to be ready. Just say it out loud in the comments below, because naming it is the first act of not hiding anymore. You know that frosted window Daniel used to look through every morning, the one where he'd watch the world go by and wonder where he fit in it? He told me he still works at the same shop, same press, same ink on his hands. but he doesn't look through that window the same way anymore. I'll see you in the next one.